All right, I'm sure you will be thrilled to learn that the middle of next week on Wednesday will be my next mock draft. I think it's my penultimate mock draft, which means next to last mock draft. I think I'll have another one maybe the day before the first round of the draft. So, been kind of kicking ideas around. And when you look at where the 49ers are picking at number 11, I don't see them moving up to get somebody. I think it'll be difficult for them to move back in this draft unless a quarterback is still there and maybe a team feels like they have to go get them. Speaking of that quarterback who somebody might move up for, Shedeur Sanders. While I was at the NFL scouting, not scouting combine, when I was at the NFL annual meeting over the weekend and early this week in Florida, that was one of the things, one of the topics. I was talking to some people there, some people who follow the draft quite closely because every general manager and head coach and owner and president were there for every team, representing all 32 teams. But Sanders is somebody that it's going to be interesting to see where he goes. I think in my first mock draft, I had him going number one overall to Tennessee. And then you could see him going, two to the Browns, three to the Giants. You could see him going nine to the Saints, perhaps. But it just kind of seems to be all over the map where he goes because now it seems like a foregone conclusion that Cam Ward will go number one overall to Tennessee. But what I tried to do, or what I'm looking at now, is just kind of scanning a lot of different mock drafts. Guys like Daniel Jeremiah and Field Yates and Mel Kiper and some others. And as far as I can tell, it looks like there's eight guys who are pretty unanimous as far as these guys are going to go in the top 10. And so those eight guys, Cam Ward, Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter, Mason Graham, Armand Membu, Shedeur Sanders, Ashton Genty, and Will Campbell. Not in that order per se, but those are eight guys that are seem to be pretty locked in. And then there are some other guys that are often mocked to go in the top 10. Jalen Walker, who I had the 49ers taking in my last mock draft. He's the stack linebacker slash edge rusher from Georgia. Tyler Warren, the tight end from Penn State, who I had going to the 49ers in my second mock draft. Who else? Michael Williams, edge rusher from Georgia. So I'm looking at this, and the first thing I thought, I know Mason Graham, the defensive tackle, is very highly thought of, but is he a guy, and I've seen him go in a lot of spots, number four overall. Is he a guy that could fall to number 11? He didn't have, the eye-popping numbers aren't there, but, you watch him and he's obviously outstanding. Um, and that's where the 49ers' biggest need is. Like if Mason Graham falls to the 49ers at number 11, I would think that that'd be a pretty easy selection. And I'm not sure there have been very many other guys where, if they fall there or if they're still available there, 49ers have to take them. But one of the things that occurred at the NFL annual meeting is toward the end, Eric Branch asked Kyle Shanahan about, are there any starting defensive linemen already on your team other than Nick Bosa? And Shanahan was kind of being funny. He was like, "You're a smart guy. You can figure it out." But yes. And what Shanahan finally revealed as he was getting up was Yetur Gross-Matos. He's a starting defensive lineman for the 49ers. And I do think that Gross-Matos is a starter. Um, he has something that I believe, well, not I believe, I know Robert Saleh really appreciates, and that's position flexibility. He can start on base downs at defensive end. So you could have on defense at defensive end, you have your base down ends of Bosa and Yetur Gross-Matos. Gross-Matos be very good against a run, setting the edge there. And then in nickel situations, he can slide inside and rush the passer. So where are the 49ers most vulnerable right now? It's without question at the defensive tackle position. They released Javon Hargrave, they released Malik Collins, and so there is a hole there. When you look at, if we're just going to say right now, who are the 49ers starting defensive tackles? It's Jordan Elliott and it's Kevin Givens. And then after that, it's Evan Anderson. And so the 49ers are very thin at that spot. So that's why I would say, if Mason Graham, and I don't think anybody has Mason Graham falling out of the top 10, but if he were to fall out of the top 10, I think that'd be a pretty easy selection for the 49ers. Then it becomes okay, let's say all those guys that I said are taken. Who would you go with? And I go back to where the Flyers' biggest need is, where this draft is extremely rich, and it is there at defensive tackle and along the defensive line as a whole. And so recently at NBC Sports Bay Area.com, I wrote about four defensive tackles the 49ers could select in the first round. And the first one, of course, was Graham. Let's just say he's already gone. And by the way, did I already say this? I was thinking, like, looking ahead a couple of weeks ago when I wrote this, I was like, you know what? On my last mock draft, I'm going to give the 49ers Mason Graham. I could see that, he might not go as high as some people project. Could he slide out of the top 10? It's possible. So my thought process was give the 49ers Mason Graham. I still might do that, but I'm kind of waffling on that now. But who else could they take at number 11? Would it be a stretch to take Walter Nolan there, Derek Harmon, Kenneth Grant? The one thing about Kenneth Grant, and I know a lot of fans have asked me about him, or they, say that he'd be perfect for the 49ers. I just don't know that he is. I mean, I think he's a large guy, 6'4", 331. He plays nose tackle. And so with that wide nine, I think you need a little bit more short area quickness to be able to cover a little bit more ground. So, I mean, he's definitely an anchor in those rundowns to tie up the middle. But, is 11 too early for him? I think that would be right, that it would be too early for him. Derek Harmon from Oregon is a guy that, he penetrates, he gets into the backfield. He had 10 and a half tackles for loss last year, 5 sacks, 4 passes defensed. And he is a disruptor. And he's somebody that, the 49ers defensive line, their defensive tackle position would automatically become better if Harmon were on the 49ers roster. The other guy, and I'm seriously considering him, and I go back, this is what is Walter Nolan. This is what Daniel Jeremiah said about him a few weeks back. He said, the player who is a great scheme fit for the 49ers, which I think would be more of a trade back than necessarily taking him right there at 11, would be Walter Nolan. So the question is he worthy of being the number 11 overall pick? And I don't see why he wouldn't be. I would think that he'd be very much in play at number 11 and not, at 17 or 22 or wherever else. Yeah, I have had him going further back in the draft in my previous mocks, but for a guy with, a guy who's disruptive, a guy who can play multiple spots on the defensive line, a guy that tested very well, showing he has the physical attributes at his pro day. Um, 14 tackles for loss, so he's living in the backfield, 6.5 sacks. Um, I mean, if Mason Graham isn't there, as we expect he won't be, um, I think the 49ers could do a lot worse than Walter Nolan at number 11. Um, Again, like if it comes down to Walter Nolan or Jalen Walker, on the other side of the ball, Tyler Warren, now that they have Juszczyk back, they invested money in a second tight end and Luke Farrell to go with George Kittle. Probably won't have a great indication of where things stand with George Kittle. He's set to enter the final year of his contract. And I do think that his negotiation got a lot more difficult when you see what Trey McBride signed for. Um, I mean, this is a guy, Trey McBride from the Cardinals, very good tight end, but now he's the highest paid tight end in NFL history. 4 years, 76 million. So if Trey McBride, who's now signed through 2029, gets a 4 year, $76 million contract, yes, I realize that George Kittle, is not um, he's not a young guy anymore. He's 31 years old. He'll turn 32 in October. But if Trey McBride is worth 4 million or 76 million over 4 years, then what's George Kittle worth? I mean, wouldn't his representation ask for 20 million a year? Is that too much for a tight end? Is that going to bog things down? Is that going to make it more difficult for the 49ers to sign him to a new deal? So I just bring all that up because of Tyler Warren, the Penn State tight end, who's not just a tight end. He can move all over the formation. He can be a short yardage back. He can do a lot of different things. So those are some of the things that I'm contemplating with that 11th overall pick for the 49ers. Um, the offensive tackles, I think that would be under consideration there would be Will Campbell and Armand Membu in whichever order. Campbell's arms are a little on the short side, so considered a little bit of a risk there to be an offensive tackle in the NFL. Membu seems to check all the boxes. So um, I don't know that a third offensive tackle would be somebody the Friars would select at number 11. I don't think that Kelvin Banks would be the guy there, but who knows? I know a lot of you out there do like Kelvin Banks there, but I would think that if all things being equal and the Friars have a chance to improve that defensive line, specifically defensive tackle, where they are so thin right now, I would think that that's the play. And so who that is, and where they might get them are questions to be asked. But that's what I'll be considering over the weekend when I start to jot down names and places for my mock draft. I think it's mock draft 5.0. So just to recap, in my first one, Shamar Stewart, I had the 49ers taking him, the edge rusher, physical talent from Texas A&M, whose production didn't match his physical attributes. Tyler Warren, the Penn State in the next one. Then I had Armand Membu, but then he tested oh so well at the combine. So I had him going earlier in my next mock. And then the last one, 4.0, was Jalen Walker, a guy who can kill two birds with one stone, replace Dre Greenlaw in base situations, and then rush the passer and basically replace Leonard Floyd in nickel situations. So that's it. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Leave a like. I want to hear what you have to say. And that is it for now.